Imagine a world where milkmen delivered fresh bottles to your doorstep, lamplighter's lit the streets at dusk, and knocker-uppers tapped on windows to wake you each morning. These are just a few of the 15 forgotten jobs that once shaped daily life. And today, they're gone. Step back in time with us and discover the people and trades that history almost forgot. Milk delivery workers. Long before supermarkets lined their aisles with endless cartons, the gentle sound of clinking bottles announced the arrival of the milk delivery worker. Every morning, families would open their doors to find fresh, unprocessed milk waiting on their steps, often along with cream, butter, or even cheese, depending on their request. These workers weren't just deliverymen, they were trusted figures woven into the rhythm of neighbourhood life. The system was simple yet personal. Households left empty bottles and handwritten notes, and the milkman faithfully returned with exactly what was needed. Reliability and familiarity built strong bonds between customers and their delivery worker, turning a routine errand into a daily connection. Children looked forward to seeing the milkman, and parents relied on him to keep their kitchens stocked. But as refrigerators became standard in homes and supermarkets expanded in the mid-20th century, the role of the milk delivery worker began to fade. By the 1970s, this once cherished service had nearly vanished from American streets. Today, the memory of milk delivery lingers as a symbol of a slower, more personal era, when trust arrived quietly at dawn, sealed in a glass bottle. Telephone operators. Before numbers could be dialed directly, every call relied on the calm voice and steady hands of a telephone operator. Seated before vast switchboards, these workers, most of them women, connected homes, businesses and entire communities one cord at a time. In towns across Australia, the operator was more than just a voice on the line. She was often the link that kept neighbours in touch, families connected, and local life running smoothly. The job demanded both technical skill and grace under pressure. Imagine managing dozens of calls at once, keeping track of names, numbers, and destinations, all while remaining polite and reassuring. In small communities, operators even became familiar figures, offering a friendly greeting or sharing a quick update about local news. By the 1960s and 1970s, automatic dialing systems gradually replaced manual switchboards. The friendly voices that once guided every connection fell silent as machines took over. Yet the memory of telephone operators endures, reminding us of a time when communication was not only about technology, but about human presence. An era when every call began with a person, not a tone. Paperboys. In the quiet hours before sunrise, the sound of bicycle wheels on empty streets signalled the arrival of the paperboy. With a heavy canvas bag slung across his shoulder, he brought the news of the world to doorsteps, one house at a time. For many Australian families, the day began with the thud of a newspaper landing on the veranda, ready to be read over breakfast. Being a paperboy was often a young person's first taste of work. It wasn't glamorous. Early mornings, unpredictable weather, and bags weighed down with stacks of newsprint. But it taught discipline, responsibility, and independence. Parents saw it as character building, and kids wore the role with a quiet sense of pride. As the decades passed, the familiar sight of paperboys peddling through neighbourhoods began to fade. The rise of professional delivery services, and later the dominance of digital media, slowly replaced this once essential job. Today, the image of a paperboy lives on in memory and folklore, a symbol of youthful determination and a simpler era, when the morning news came not from a glowing screen, but from the hands of a boy on a bike. The Fuller Brush Man. Knocking on doors with a suitcase in hand, the Fuller Brush Man was once a familiar sight in suburbs and country towns alike. Representing the Fuller Brush Company, these salesmen carried neatly arranged collections of brooms, cleaning supplies, and household essentials. promising quality goods delivered right to your door. In post-war Australia, a visit from the Fuller Brush man was more than a transaction. It was a personal encounter, often filled with friendly conversation and the latest neighbourhood gossip. These men were skilled in persuasion and charm, demonstrating brushes or polish right on the customer's doorstep. For many households, their visits were welcomed as much for the social contact as for the products. Housewives, often at home during the day, relied on these salesmen not only for practical tools, but also for a moment of connection in their routine. By the late 20th century, however, the rise of supermarkets and big box stores rendered door-to-door sales increasingly unnecessary. The cheerful knock of the Fuller Brush man grew rare and eventually disappeared. Today, he stands as a reminder of an era when commerce was carried by hand, face to face, with trust built one doorway at a time. Printing press operators. The low rumble of machinery and the sharp scent of ink once filled the air in print shops, where printing press operators worked tirelessly to bring words to life. These skilled men and women stood at the heart of communication, ensuring newspapers, books, and pamphlets rolled off the press with precision and clarity. In Australia, their work meant that communities, whether in bustling cities or small country towns, stayed informed and connected. Operating a press required more than pushing buttons. It was a craft. Operators had to align type, monitor rollers, adjust ink flow, and keep the heavy machines running smoothly. Every page that emerged bore the mark of their expertise. Mistakes were costly, and so steady hands and sharp eyes were essential. For decades, printing press operators were unsung heroes of information, often working long nights to meet deadlines. But as technology advanced, first with offset printing and later with digital publishing, the need for traditional press operators declined. Today, their role survives only in specialty workshops and museums. They remind us of an era when news and knowledge were not instant, but carefully pressed into paper, one sheet at a time. Elevator operators. There was a time when stepping into an elevator felt like a small act of ceremony. Behind the polished brass doors stood the elevator operator, smartly dressed, poised, and ready to guide passengers smoothly from floor to floor. In Australia's grand hotels, department stores and city offices, these attendants brought both elegance and assurance to a simple vertical journey. Operating an elevator required skill long before push buttons took over. The operator controlled speed and precision with a lever, stopping perfectly level at each floor. But the job was more than mechanics. It was about people. A friendly greeting, a polite conversation, or even a reassuring nod could brighten a commuter's day. They were part of the rhythm of daily life, symbols of courtesy and reliability. By the 1970s, automation rendered the role obsolete. Self-service lifts became the norm, and the once familiar uniformed attendants quietly disappeared from sight. Yet their memory endures in the stories of old buildings and fading photographs, a reminder of a time when even the shortest ride came with a touch of human grace, and every journey began with a smile and a steady hand on the lever. Pin setters. Before the hum of automatic machines echoed through bowling alleys, there were the pin setters, quick, agile workers who kept the game rolling. Usually teenagers looking for pocket money, they crouched behind the lanes, waiting for the crash of pins before darting out to reset them by hand. In mid-century Australia, bowling was a booming pastime, and behind every strike or spare was a human keeping pace with precision and grit. The job demanded focus and lightning reflexes. A moment's delay could mean a ball speeding down the lane before the pins were in place. A dangerous, noisy, and often sweaty job under the glow of neon lights. Yet for many young Australians, it was a rite of passage. Their first job, their first paycheck, and their first taste of independence. When automatic pin-setting machines arrived in the 1950s, the role quickly began to disappear. By the 1960s, most alleys had embraced automation, and the pin setter became a memory. Today, they stand as a reminder of a time when every frame of fun relied on human hands and youthful energy, not circuitry and gears. Knife sharpeners. Once upon a time, the sound of a grinding wheel turning echoed through suburban streets and country lanes. It meant the knife sharpener was nearby, pushing his cart, ringing a small bell, and offering his skill to every household and corner shop. In mid-20th century Australia, these travelling tradesmen were a welcome sight, restoring dull blades and tools to razor-sharp life. Armed with a pedal-powered wheel and years of practice, the knife sharpener worked with rhythm and care. Housewives brought out kitchen knives, butchers handed over cleavers, and farmers queued with their shears and axes. It was honest work, hands blackened with metal dust, clothes smelling faintly of oil and sparks. Their craft required precision and patience, earned through long hours on the road and countless spinning stones. But as affordable factory-made blades flooded the market and disposable culture took hold, the knife sharpeners' visits grew rare. By the 1970s, their bells had fallen silent. Today, they are remembered as symbols of craftsmanship and self-reliance, a time when tools were meant to last, and a man with a grindstone could bring them back to life. Film projectionists. High above the audience, hidden in the dim glow of a small booth, worked the film projectionist, the unseen storyteller of every cinema. In the golden age of Australian movie theatres, from the 1930s through the 1970s, projectionists were the quiet guardians of the silver screen. They threaded reels of celluloid film through humming projectors, ensuring that every frame flowed seamlessly across the curtain of light. The job demanded focus and precision. One mistake, a misaligned reel, a burnt frame, or a mistimed switch could interrupt the magic below. Many projectionists worked alone for long hours, surrounded by the rhythmic clatter of machinery and the faint smell of warm film. Yet despite their solitude, they brought stories to life for thousands every night, their work invisible but essential. When digital projection arrived, the art of film handling began to fade. The whir of reels and the flicker of light gave way to silent servers and buttons. By the 2000s, most projection rooms had gone dark. Still, for those who remember the shimmer of real film, the projectionist remains a figure of quiet pride, a craftsman who made dreams dance across the silver screen. Video store clerks. Before streaming platforms and endless on-demand libraries, a trip to the local video store was an event. Rows of VHS tapes and DVDs lined the shelves, each cover promising adventure, laughter, or tears. At the heart of it all stood the video store clerk, part movie expert, part community storyteller. These clerks knew every title by heart. They'd recommend hidden gems, debate over the best action heroes, and help families choose the perfect film for Friday night. The store had its own rhythm, the soft whir of tape rewinders, the chatter of customers, and the satisfying clunk of a returned cassette dropping into the slot. Working as a clerk meant more than restocking shelves. It meant connecting people through stories. Regulars were greeted by name, and movie nights began with a smile across the counter. But as streaming services took over in the late 2000s, the magic of browsing aisles began to fade. Today, the video store clerk exists mostly in memory, a reminder of a time when movie night started with a walk, a conversation, and the thrill of discovering something new in a cardboard case. Typewriter repair technicians. In a world that once clicked and clattered with rhythm, typewriter repair technicians were the unsung heroes behind the written word. Offices, schools, and newspapers across Australia relied on their steady hands to keep the keys striking smoothly and the ribbons rolling cleanly. These technicians understood the language of metal and ink. With small screwdrivers, brushes and oil-stained rags, they brought jammed keys and tangled springs back to life. Each repair was both mechanical and meticulous, a balance of precision and patience. The faint smell of ink, the gentle snap of a spacebar, the hum of productivity, it all depended on their quiet expertise. For decades, typewriter repairmen were a fixture in towns and cities, visiting offices or working from small workshops filled with spare parts and half-repaired machines. But as computers took hold in the 1980s and 90s, their craft began to fade. Today, only a few specialists remain, serving collectors and enthusiasts who cherish the clack of a real typewriter. The rest is memory, a tribute to the artisans who kept words flowing long before the age of backspace and Bluetooth. Carriage drivers. Before engines roared and headlights lit the roads, the steady rhythm of hooves echoed through Australian towns and cities. Carriage drivers were the lifeblood of early transportation, guiding horses and passengers with skill, patience, and pride. From elegant hansom cabs in Sydney to humble drays delivering goods across dusty country roads, carriage drivers connected people and places long before the motorcar took over. They knew every shortcut, every rut, and every restless horse by heart. Their days began at dawn with the brushing of coats and tightening of harnesses, and ended only when the last passenger was safely home. The job required more than strength. It demanded trust between human and animal, and a calm hand even in chaos. Rain or shine, carriage drivers kept the world moving one hoofbeat at a time. By the early 20th century, as automobiles grew faster and cheaper, horse-drawn travel faded from the streets. Today, carriage drivers survive mostly in parades and tourist rides, gentle echoes of a time when journeys were slower, quieter, and every ride told a story. Lamplighters. As dust settled over quiet streets, the soft glow of gas lamps slowly flickered to life, thanks to the steady work of the lamplighter. Long before electricity brightened Australia's towns, lamplighters brought light to the darkness, one flame at a time. Armed with a ladder, a pole, and a small torch, these workers moved from lamp to lamp each evening, igniting the wicks that would guide travellers safely home. At dawn, they returned to extinguish the flames, ensuring the lamps were cleaned, refueled, and ready for another night. Their routine was a rhythm of reliability, a quiet service that most people never noticed, yet everyone depended on. Lamplighters often knew their neighbourhoods intimately. They worked in silence, their silhouettes framed by the soft hiss of gas and the fading sunset. It was more than a job. It was a nightly ritual that kept communities connected through light. With the arrival of electric streetlights in the early 20th century, the lamplighters' role faded into history. Today, they remain symbols of a gentler time, when illumination came not from switches and wires, but from human hands and quiet dedication. Blacksmiths. Before factories and assembly lines shaped the modern world, it was the blacksmith's hammer that built it. In the heart of every Australian town, the steady ring of metal against metal echoed through the air, the sound of creation, strength, and skill. Blacksmiths forged the tools, horseshoes, hinges, and wagon parts that kept communities moving. Their forges glowed like small suns, and every spark carried the mark of craftsmanship. With muscle, precision, and years of practice, they shaped raw iron into objects both practical and enduring. The blacksmith shop was more than a workplace. It was a gathering spot. Farmers, travellers, and townsfolk alike stopped by for repairs, advice, or simply the warmth of the forge on a cold morning. Each hammer strike told a story of hard work and human connection. But as industrial production and modern machinery took over in the mid-20th century, the role of the village blacksmith began to fade. Today, only a few artisans keep the craft alive, blending tradition with art. The blacksmith remains a symbol of resilience, a reminder of when strength, fire, and human hands shaped the world. Knocker-uppers. Long before alarm clocks buzzed and smartphones beeped, people relied on a far more personal wake-up call: the knocker-upper. In the quiet streets of early 20th century Australia and Britain, these early risers had one simple but vital job: to make sure others woke up on time. Armed with a long stick, a pea shooter, or even a small baton, the knocker-upper would walk from house to house in the early hours, tapping on bedroom windows to rouse sleeping workers. Factory hands, miners and railwaymen depended on them to start their shifts on time, especially before the invention of reliable household clocks. It was a job that required punctuality, patience, and a strong constitution. Rain or shine, they made their rounds before dawn, often knowing each customer by name and routine. Their rhythmic tapping was both a service and a soundtrack to the waking city. By the 1940s, as alarm clocks became affordable and dependable, the knocker-uppers' trade quietly faded into history. Today, they stand as quaint reminders of a simpler time, when waking up wasn't a matter of technology, but of trust, timing, and a friendly knock on the window. These forgotten jobs may be gone, but their stories live on. From the gentle clack of a typewriter to the steady rhythm of a horse-drawn carriage, each trade reminds us of a time when life moved a little slower, and human skill and connection were at the heart of everyday life. Which of these vanished professions do you wish still existed? Share your thoughts in the comments and keep the memories alive.